Now let us go and create our model over here. So for that, we'll go to the country. We'll start with the country feature over here. And let's go to the infrastructure over here. This is the layer, as I have mentioned previously, where we'll be putting all of the external connection. So database is our external connection. So we'll be working with the infrastructure layer over here. So let's just go and I'll just go and create the new folder, right? So let's just go and add the modules over here, and inside this particular modules I'm going to create the one more new file, and let's call this one as the country. I guess that should be the country underscore the model, or you can just go and call the country depending on the what naming convention that you want to put over here. But for now, let me just go and create the country underscore the module, that the py file over here. And now we'll create the class over here that will be of the country. So country country over here, and let's have the model. And we will need to go and actually import the base over here. And if you remember previously, we created that particular base over here. So to import that particular base, we will just go and import it from the app dot the core, right? So core dot the data, and then the source we have, and inside of the source we have the local, and in the local we have the base, and from there we are going to import our base over here. So as I mentioned previously, that once we have that particular base, we need to import it over here. This base plus or the base plus that we or the base interface that we have defined over here, we need to import it over here in our model file, and we need to make use of that as our base class, or we need to inherit from that one, right? And once we have done this one, right, so now we can just go and make use of our table name. We'll define a table name which will be of the country over here. So just underscore the table name, and that will be of our country or the countries, whatever you want to define. So for that, the table name will make it as a plural over here. So that will be of the countries over here actually. So let's define the let's keep a naming convention for our tables that will be of the not the singular but the plural over here. And let's go down over here. Let's add our column now. So now first thing that we need is the column, and then we need to import it from the SQL over here. So the SQL HME over here actually. So let's just go and import the column, and then the column will be, the type will be of the integer, integer. We need to import actually from here, right? So let's just go and import the over here as well. And then the first thing that we'll do is the primary key, right? So primary key equals to be of the true, and then we also will index it as a true. So now we have the ID column defined, right, with the column that is coming from the SQL HME, and it's the type of the integer, and then the primary key is of the true. Basically it will be of the primary key now, and then we are also going to index it by the ID over here. Since this is a unique the column that we have generated, so we'll make use as an index as well. So indexing and all of those are the it's the SQL related, right? So it will basically help us to do the indexing, and once we do the indexing, the querying and searching will be much more faster compared to without using any of the indexing or without indexing of our database tables. So basically just remember that, but if you want to learn more about the indexing, just go and search or do some research on the indexing. It's a really large topic. And I'll just go and have the name over here, and each country will have a name. So I'll define a name column over here, and this particular name column will be of the type will be of the string, right? And we need to import it from the SQL HME over here, don't forget to that. and also make it as the unique as a true. So each name of that particular country will be true, and also index it as a true. Since this is a unique, I can make use of the index. So if it is a unique, then only I'm going to make it as a index as a true over here. That is the requirement. And I'll just go and say the nullable will be of the false. So this column should not be of the null. So if you don't pass this particular the name value, once we are inserting it to it will give us an error, because that's the required field that we need to pass. And let's have the country code, and for the country code I'll also make it as a unique, right? So each of the country code that we insert should be also a unique one, right? And the indexing, since this is a unique, I'll also index it by it, as well as make it as a nullable to the false over here. And each country can also have the currency, right? So currency, or I'll just make it as the currency underscore the code over here. I guess that will be much more easier. Currency code, and column will be type is of the string, and unique, right? So each country has a unique currency code. Or let's just not make use of the unique, and let's just go and remove that, right? And then the nullable should be of the false as well. So every country should provide its currency code as well, right? And created at, right? So the created at, and which will be of equal to the column, and we'll make use of the date and time over here. And let's import it from as well from the SQL Alchemy over here. And here we'll make use of the time zone, right? So time zone will be of equals to of the true over here, and default will be of the I'll make use of the default. Okay, so let's not make use of the default. I'll make use of the server default. So I'll just go and make use of the server default over here, and then the function that now, and I need to actually go and import this function over here. So to import that, I guess I'll just go and import it from the SQL Alchemy over here dot the ORM, I guess, and in the ORM I can import the function over here, func over here. I guess that should be the correct one that we have imported over here, right? SQL Alchemy helper provide the SQL function for the ORM. So can we use function that now as a default creator of the timestamp? So func.now will give us the default timestamp over here. So that is what we require over here. Default timestamp is what is going to get from this particular function that now over here. Similarly, we'll make use of the update that updated at or update at or the updated. So let's make use of the update create created. So let's make use of the created and updated over here, right? Created at and updated at, and the column will be of the date and time. The type will be of the date and time, and then the time zone will be of this will be of the time zone based, right? And the server default, now it's going to grab the default timestamp, as well as whenever it's going to update, it's also going to grab the date and time automatically. So we don't have to provide this too. It's going to grab it from the default timestamp, right? Server timestamp, and it's going to insert it to our database table. And with this, we have finally set up the country model that's going to make use of the base that is coming from our core, right? That is what we have defined over here, and we have already created some of the columns, as well as we have created the created at and updated at, which will be of time zone aware, and it's going to by default set the server default or the database server time actually, right? So it will be our time zone aware. So basically, if you want to later convert it to a different time zone using that particular created and updated time, it will be possible. It's in because it's storing the time zone actually, right? So it's a time zone aware field that we have created over here. So it's basically good to make use of the time zone, because if you have a multiple user in a different time zone, you can actually go and convert it based on each of the user time zone later, if that is a time zone aware field over here. And this looks pretty good over here. The other thing that we can do over here is, let's try to improve a bit over here. So for the ID, it's a primary key, and index, I guess we don't require. By default it should create an index for us for the primary key, as well as for the name, which is of the unique. It should be it should have a default index for us, right? The database that we are using is the Postgres, and the Postgres should create B-tree for us by default for each of the unique field and for the primary key. So we should be able to remove that one, and that should be good enough, right? So default should be good enough, and we can remove that. And also what we can do over here is on the updated add, if you don't want to have a default value whenever the record is inserted over here, like for the created add, it's also having the default value, which is of the server default time it's going to grab. And also for the updated add, for updated add we can remove this, because we can make it as a nullable. So I'll just go and say the nullable over here, which will be of equal to the true. And once we create that particular record, it should be empty, and once we update that particular record, it should have that particular updated add value filled over here. So that should be good enough, and I guess that should be a good practice, because for updated add we don't want to fill in once we insert a record, but it should only update add once we update that particular record over here. And we can also have this particular code as the country code over here, COUNTRY, country underscore the code over here. The country code, I guess it's much more clear, as well as the currency code over here. And I guess that should be all.